which is, if what you are saying about the divine love path is true, and our religion, which promotes priesthood ordinances as a way to God, isn't bringing people closer to an at-onement state with God, what advice would you give to spirits in the spirit world who are practicing Mormonism?
Well, I suppose I would give advice to both spirits in the spirit world and people on earth. If we look at the advice we'd give to the spirits in the spirit world who are practicing the Mormon religion still, what I would suggest that they do is they need to ask themselves, are they at one with God even yet? Now, surely after hundreds of years of practicing the Mormon religion, or almost over 100 years of practicing the Mormon religion, they should be at one with God by now. If I became at one with God on earth in 30 years, it should be possible in the spirit world to become at one with God within 100 years, surely. Now, if they are not at one with God yet, and they don't know what at one with God feels like or looks like, then we can easily invite a spirit to them who does know what at one with God feels like and looks like, and they can show the condition. And if they themselves are not in that condition, it is because they are holding on to things that are not true. They are holding on to unloving feelings within their soul as well. So it's an issue of truth and love and humility. So I would suggest to those spirits in the spirit world to exercise more humility and discover the things they have yet to believe and discover because they couldn't accept them before now. So in other words, they need to allow themselves to have their ideas about what is truth stretched beyond the teachings of the earth and beyond their current teachings that they have in the spirit world, and accept new teachings. This is what they firstly need to do. Secondly, once they have done that, it would be fantastic if they were willing to relay that information to the people on the planet, whether they are Mormons or not. But it would be great if they could relay it to the people who are of the Mormon faith, because many people in that faith are very open to having that information relayed to them. The second thing I would do is I would advise the people on earth still who are of the Mormon faith, and this applies, by the way, to any faith, not just the Mormon faith, to allow themselves to be open to changing their stance on their religious faith. In other words, we want to bring every religious faith into more harmony with God's laws of love. So whenever we notice that we have a teaching that is out of harmony with love, we need to change it. Whenever we notice that we have a teaching that is out of harmony with the fact that God is always loving, we need to change it. Whenever we have any idea or concept that God agrees with violence, we need to change it. And if we allow ourselves to go through this process of change in a humble way, then we'll have the spirits helping us in this process of change on the planet, and the religions on earth changing very rapidly as a result. And instead of having stagnant religious systems, and if you look at most of the religious systems on earth, they have been stagnant for hundreds, if not thousands of years. We will stop having stagnant religious systems, and we'll be having growing religious systems. Religious systems that allow for the concepts of love to be further enhanced on the planet. That's what we need. That's what we need from religion. And that's what we need from all religious faiths. From the Mormon religious faith, we have the possibility of getting it perhaps sooner than other religious faiths because of their openness to the communication with spirits. But only if the spirits engage the process in a loving manner.
Sure, yeah. The final question is from myself with regards to what you've just said. What would you say would be the major investments or the major roadblocks there would be for both spirits in the spirit world practicing certain faiths and people on earth to become open to what you've just suggested? What are the emotional investments that people would have in not taking that course of action?
Well, darling, now we're going to have a conversation that lasts hours and hours and hours, because the reality is there are so many emotions that prevent us from accepting new truth. For example, just let's look at the truth of God being a loving God only, not being a God of punishment, not being a God of wrath or rage or anger, and that in fact love has no association with violence. Let's look at that particular belief. The majority of families on the earth are brought up in a system where violence is sometimes used in order to control a child. Because violence is sometimes used, the parent often says, I'm doing this because I love you. So there is now a direct association between love and violence established within a child. The child now has within it an emotional belief that love will accept violence, and also an emotional predisposition now to accepting that God is perhaps a violent person and can still be loving even if he is violent. Can you see just that one thing causes huge amounts of problem on the planet? And that's just one emotion. Yeah. You know, you could talk about that one emotion and its underlying core problems that it creates for days. And this is the problem with all of the concepts that are based on out of harmony with love, is that many of them began in our childhood due to our relationship with our parents and the belief systems that our parents had. And then as a result of that, they just became more and more distorted. And we then accept religious beliefs that are distorted because our own upbringing has been distorted in love. So my feelings are that there are very many emotions that mankind is going to need to work their way through honestly if they are truly going to be more accepting of new religious ideals. Oftentimes it's the non-religious persons who are more accepting of divine truth than religious persons. I might say it again, eh? Because oftentimes it is the people who are atheists, who do not have a concept of God, who are not addicted to a concept of God that's false, who are willing to see when unloving behaviour is involved on the earth and are willing to change it. And this is very sad, that many of the religions are not leaders in love, but rather are followers in love. For instance, if we go back to the thing that we opened our discussion with today, the issue of homosexuality, we can see that many religions are the last people who want to change the laws about homosexuality. Many of the people who are atheists and not religious want to change the laws right now. But many of the people who are religious have no desire to change those laws at all. They are dragging the chain with regard to love, right? Just because of a religious concept that they are maintaining because they have a belief system that they are willing to give up because they don't have the humility to see that it's actually in error. So I believe it's better, rather than talking about the different emotions that are involved, there's literally hundreds and hundreds of emotions involved in every single belief system that is unloving on the planet. Rather than talking about the emotions involved, perhaps what we need to mention in closing is that we need to be open to changing them. We need to be open to releasing these unloving emotions and the unloving beliefs. If somebody else is questioning whether something is loving, we need to have a look at it. Even if we're not open to change it, we need to have a look at it at least with some discussion. And we need to involve logic in our discussion. It is completely illogical for a person to not accept gay marriage, for example. Completely illogical. Doesn't matter what faith they have. It is completely illogical from an intellectual perspective. If it's illogical from an intellectual perspective, then it's also out of harmony with love. And we need to understand the relationship between logic, emotions and love, you know. And so I feel that's where we need to go with religious faith on the planet. And this applies to the Mormon faith, the faith that I used to be in when I was when I was here in the first century, the faith that and now both of them, the faith I was in before I became what I am now in this life, both of those faiths have all sorts of illogical belief systems. And we need to have an ability to give them up if we're truly going to grow as a human race.
Sure. Well, thank you very much.
No worries. Hopefully that's answered most of Caroline's questions.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank Caroline, and I'd also like to say that even though I've used her questions as a guide, not everything I've expressed is her viewpoint, or I haven't represented her questions in like word for word at times, so there is my inflection on this interview. But
of course.
Thank you, Caroline, for contributing and for being questioning. I feel that's a really lovely quality.
Yes, and what we'd like to do over the next few days, if we get the opportunity, is to actually start channeling some of these Mormon spirits who are wanting to ask questions, and also some of the Christian spirits perhaps too, who want to ask questions in a sincere and respectful manner, and just address some of these underlying issues that they have with regard to their faith. Because I feel that if we can help these spirits grow, then once the spirits recognise the truth, they can also help many other people on the planet to recognise the same truth. Yeah.
Thank you, darling.
Thanks, darling.
Yeah.
Thanks for being the, what would you call it, surrogate interviewer today.
The stand.
The stand.
It's been my pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.